Thanks, Angelo. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude for this kind invitation to Mira, Tomasz, and Dan. I'm honored, delighted to be here to share the time and space, to share the ideas and thoughts during this conference, and to stand next to my beloved and respected Professor Waldenfels. I wrote an article which was an abstract, typical philosophical article, but it was like faceless, without any tangible meaning, and I deleted completely. I decided to write something completely different, following the personal, as a phenomenologist, we should, following the personal experience described by means of poetic language, in order to make some comparisons between the end of a great war and our contemporary times. And by doing so, I will shortly try to describe you a story about Dusan Vasiljev's personal experience. The experiences of European turning points 100 years after the end of World War I can be presented through a controversial but extremely interesting and tragic persona of the Serbian post-war poetic scene. Poetic motifs of Dusan Vasiljev will be a guiding light for the virtual confrontation of the returnees from the World War I with the challenges we face today. Almost at the end of the war, an 18-year-old boy joins the Austro-Hungarian army deliberately. As a volunteer, Vasiljev participates in the battles on the Italian front, especially massive and intensive during the offensive on the Revije, not so far away from here. Unlike many of his countrymen, Dusan did not try to find a way to join the Serbian army on the remote Thessaloniki front. It is difficult to say if it was a matter of civil loyalty or discomfort when considering taking arms against his home country. He also did not join the disappointed returnees from the Eastern Front, who, in the tens of thousands, deserted from K&K army and formed the Green Cadre. The Green Cadre consists of, in one moment, in Croatia and North Serbia, of 70,000 armed guys. It was a huge army, belonged to nobody at the time. In hopes, Green Cadre, in hopes that through robbing the rich, they can build a more just and better world. Expressionism of this gifted poet is marked in existential paradoxes. Voluntary participation in the Great War on the side of the monarchy, whose mortal enemies were Dusan's kinsmen south of the Sava and Danube River. The shocking violence he had to endure from his countrymen when, after the war, he appeared in his K&K uniform, the most ceremonial piece of clothing he owned. The fatal disease he brought from the front that ended his life at a mere age of 24. The irreconcilable gap between the returnees from the war and their fellow citizens who spent the war at their homes. The unusual life story of this young man is justified through an inexplicable force which drove him to enlist and participate in the Great War, which he could not resist. I quote his verses. An adventurer I'm not, like Manfred or Per Gynt, but I had to get off. This unusual line, next line, namely, is empty and consists mainly of dots. It is as if the necessity of life constellation is embodied in it, which we cannot resist, but which fundamentally determines our lives. Such necessity is usually referred to as destiny. Researchers of Southeastern Europe emphasize that it is characteristic for this region to remove any sort of transcendence from destiny, and that it is displayed as something of this world in In this part of Europe, destiny is almost something mundane. Still, Vasiliev does not see destiny in his everyday, in the inevitable interlacing in the webs of power. From his perspective, destiny is not the result of inner constellation of the powerful and powerless, the privileged and subjugated. On the contrary, destiny appears in the form of an irresistible call to the present, announcing the permanent exit from the present, ordinary, everyday. Sensing the epochal event after which neither him nor the world will ever be the same again, was far more enticing for Vasiliev than the question on which side he will fight and who is his adversary is going to be. It looks as if his example is just one of many who witnessed the need to depart from themselves. The modern search for subjectivity in the spirit of Emanuel Levinas rests on the idea of a fracture, a break, a radical change, transcendence that is unimaginable if we do not escape, do not leave the current being. The young poet felt deeply that the thing we want to write about requires means and forms which were not known or available to the poetry of his era. The world of bare, raw, and dehumanized human experience, and the world the poet builds with his lines are so heterogenic that at first the poet is left with nothing but an attempt to try to figure out the alienness of the world, but recognizing and illuminating his own situation. On the other hand, it does not allow him to believe in a harmonious symbiosis of the poet and what the poet writes about. This means that the modern poets unwillingly concede to the absenteeism of the truth, a permanent discord and discrepancy. Writing poetry no longer refers to creating harmony, but an enunciation and presentation of existing discords, conflicts, and ambiguities. It's extraordinary privilege to enter deep into the empty space that separates the poetic world from the mundane belonged, without doubt, to the veterans of the Great War. The key motive with which the Dusan Vasiliev brings is not tied to the mass killings, pain, and suffering of millions, nor to the monstrous power of means of destructions created by the unusual rationality of the technologically advanced civilization. Vasiliev is not fascinated with the poisons, powerful machine guns, nor the enormous cannons, tanks, and zeppelins. From all of the new items he saw on the battlegrounds, in his mind, it's the virus that left the principal impression. There are a lot of brilliant verses and lines that say, for example, "The view is nothing but virus," or "Our paths are now merged in misery and pain, and the virus cut our view of the sky. People within us are deeply, deeply hidden. They cannot come back." As if the wires with Vasiliev are not laid down horizontally, but stand vertically. They fill the perspective of the observer by placing themselves between him and reality, to deny access both inner and outer. To a man surrounded by wires, the sky as an archetypical symbol of paradise, peace, the true symbol of living, remains out of reach and incomprehensible. Furthermore, the wires obstruct the view of the sky, which means they significantly reduce the horizon of the visible and thinkable. The subject in the wires, the sky, has been taken away at the level of imagining, fantasizing. Even if he considers looking up at the sky, his gaze will necessarily remain unfulfilled, empty, purely international, with no contact with the object. On the human remains suppressed, is not allowed to appear and display himself, to become visible and tangible in the interhuman mundane reality. The experience of virus is not comparable to the trauma in the regular sense of the word. Vasiliev is not the kind soul contaminated by destruction. Neither is his poetry comparable with the longing for a more beautiful and better world. On the contrary, there is but a trace of remorse that the warring storm did not bypass him. In the end, this volunteer, even after the war, feels that in it he found the most eloquent, most educational event of his time. I quote, "I'm not sorry that I waded in blood up to my knees, or that I have survived the red years of slaughter. Yet because of this holy pilgrimage, ruin has heaped upon me." This song a man sings after the war, one of the best. The poet would be shocked today if he was to find an infinite sting of virus north of his hometown of Kikinda in 2018. The border with Hungary is quite close, which fancied itself from its southern neighbors. How would Vasiliev respond to the story of an order of a massive amount of virus which was denied by the German manufacturer with the response that their viruses are made for animals and not humans? Unlike Dušan's contemporary Kafka, who also died in 1924, the animals are no longer in the function of literary metamorphosis and research into the human condition. It appears as if the modern statesmen are rising the virtue hierarchy which Kafka tried to tear down, or at least interrupt, which is founded on the primacy of the human high above the animalistic ones. The fence intended for animals is placed at the border between the true familiar people and the unwanted aliens who are a priori denied humanity. It is more probably that the step away from the norm is literal here, and that all the people who wanted to enter Hungary are reduced to animals because the treatment they receive is reduced to a restrained order. Such a treatment is a characteristic of man's behavior toward wild and feral beasts. The fact that the fencing of an entire nation is directed against the elementary European values, against the very basis of the Union, which is non-discrimination and free movement, probably does not disturb all those civilians who, acting as government's guard dogs, are currently patrolling that fence and are helping the elements of the state in keeping the first line of defense of Fortress Europe against the unwanted alien scourge. On the other hand, the poet would probably be delighted by the idea of the reality of a Europe with no borders, and the target of his excursions would most definitely be border between Austria and Italy, on which, instead of the former front, a couple of monuments are present, but no one is asking for passports. However, Vasiliev would not find the association of virus and the borders of Europe confusing. Integration of Europe in the conflict with the exterior other world remind the poet of the customs of his countrymen, who would unite, even when fighting among themselves, against the alien, especially if that alien appeared hostile and aggressive. He would recall Fichte, who, after the Great Turkish War, whose actions affected his province as well, Vasiliev's province, of course, not Fichte, and was ended with the first signing of a peace treaty of European powers and the Ottoman Empire in Sremski Karlovci in 1699, said that after the Turkish advance into Europe, the idea arose that, I quote Fichte's idea, Christians are but one state and have one interest. End of quotation. Vasiliev would probably try to connect the lost opportunity for uniting Europe with different terms the notions which were prevalent in his surroundings concerning Europe. On the one hand, Europe was there as a cultural term, with which he felt an undivided unity. If Europe is indivisible as a cultural area and single-minded, as a political area it is deeply divided. We have the politics of the French Revolution on one side and the Paris Commune, with which the notions which have been subjugated for centuries liken themselves. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the real politic of great European powers which, like Great Britain, kept the dying Ottoman Empire alive and through that delayed the dream of the Southlands for final liberations. Such politics was seen as wrong, oversimplified and ruthless by the Romantics, like Yehudi Zmaj and Jure Akšić. Its pinnacle Vassiliev would have recognized in the experiences of the Great War. It embodied the exact opposites of the ideas of the French Revolution: inequality, absence of freedom, disunity. Put into verse, such politics enables on all sides the inherited image of bloodthirsty figure which lurks beyond the Slavic South. Quote, "We are all big Turks in this slaughter." Whilst trying to offer a response to the rift between Europe as a cultural term and as a political term, Dusan Vasiliev unifies the smothered hope and the promise of a new unknown poetics, but the poetics completely up to its task. Quote, "Other forms would have saved us." That's where my lecture differs from Cohen. I don't think that X ideas can save us. I'm totally along with his lines. We need new forms, other forms. So salvation in form can be found only by a poet who nurtures and deep trust in the power of the arts to provide an exit from the contradictions of the world he inhabits. That is, from the dead ends in which his era is entangled. Close encounter of the poetic and the everyday world did not seem like a plausible utopia to Vassiliev. Even though the post-war idea of salvation expressed a persistent, tough human nostalgia for a better world, and this category of collective experience was lived essentially in the waiting mode. The experience of the war returnees brings the unusually different challenge of the adaptation. In the poetry of Dusan Vasiliev, the question of return relates to both the dramatic, radical change in the scenery in which the war, chaos and death make way for the prose of the everyday, and to the meeting of the war traumatized returnee and his countrymen who found out about the war atrocities and killings from the safety of his warm home. Instead of the return to one's homeland bringing so much desired solace and remedy to the wounds caused by war, the scenery of the return stands witness to effects opposite of those that were expected. The war-born trauma is joined by another trauma caused by the misunderstanding of those for who the returnee initially believes are confidential, familiar, known, and close. The alien is one without history, of whose personal history we know nothing, and he was not a part of our life world. The war returnees and modern-day migrants share that kind of alienness, which creates a gap in relation to the domicile population. The heterogeneous experience registers create a distance which unconditionally must be surpassed to be able to talk about closeness again. The meeting of the returnee with the former acquaintances becomes a trial in which the test of mutual trust is the subject. It is no longer measured by the mutual memories, former friendships, but with what the returnee brings with himself as a war memory. That discrepancy between the uniqueness and the determined significance with the absent attributes to his experience on the one hand, and the attempts of the familiar people to make them pseudo-typical on the other, to characterize them as pseudo-relevant is one of the largest hurdles in the establishing of mutual we relations. The returnee represents the sting in the body of his former community. His traumas are mostly experienced as unwanted ballast, and his experience as completely irrelevant for the life conditions of a civilian. Those traumatized by war and those untouched by war live in the experience registers that do not overlap. They do not speak the same language. Because of that, Vasiliev says to all the war veterans, I quote, "For us, only the smile of pity ripens." End of quotation. From the perspective of those who remain beyond the war, the returnee overstates the significance of his experiences, as those experiences in everyday life do not appear appealing nor useful. However dramatic the experiences of migrants might be, as they are, by default, likened with one of many, already known as and well-learned lessons about the dark sides of humanity. That way they are neutralized, defaced, irrelevant. Like the returnees, migrants are often classified under the name of unfortunate human destiny, worthy only of a pity and nothing else. Extraordinary experiences of borderline human situations are that way normalized. The crucial issues with normalization is, according to Wallenfels, that it creates what it normalizes. Whether you are talking about the migrant or a returnee, we are talking of a social outcast, persons whose crucial personal experiences are not relevant to the community they are a part of. What is crucial for the returnee and the migrant, the extraordinary experience that have formative role in the shaping of life as a whole, and not only personal, individual, but the future of the entire collective. For the familiar civilian population is a trivial, unworthy, and meaningless string of unfortunate events with no general significance. The attempt of the returnee to generalize his experience of the war in the collective framework inevitably clashes with the procedures of normalization. I quote Vasiliev, "And we believe that all that was nothing but the joke of a drunken wild carnival that sailed away in the blood, and so all is fine now." Remembering the war of the reason for migration can hardly be conciliated with the needs of everyday life. Those two positions are conflicted and threaten each other, or even cancel each other out. Instead of allowing the uneasy presence and give the lead role to the unpleasant sting of the war witness, the civilians rather try to go back to normal, which has for a consequence been nurturing the idea that war is nothing but meaningless, terrible excess which came and went. The returnee is above all irritated by the leveling, unjust and violent change of the extraordinarily significant revelation in the meaningless and pointless fornication. I quote, "Truth, holy and just, we buried," just 1 minute, yes, "for the 100th time
Again?
and gave away to oblivion that which once was." The integration of the returnee is successful only when he hopes to emphasize his wartime existential experiences and when he completely turns towards the trivial everyday of his community. For this to happen, the war veteran must become a consumer. Recognition can come only when he turns to consuming. Nicely dressed, shaved and washed, the veteran becomes one of us. In the nice, elegant suite, Vasiliev most certainly would not have been beaten. and his clothes would not have been ripped. However, the image of migrants in nice streets would not be able to lessen their aliens. Simply put, the migrant in a nice street is illegal, economic migrant who came to bask in our common wealth. From there he is unwanted, while the migrant in rags, who owes nothing and who lost everything in the war, represents the ideal typical opposite of the ideal tourist. The tourist spends, smiles, admires and leaves, while the migrants comes to stay and become a part of our community. The tourist is benevolent foreigner. He makes us connected to a larger world without imposing its problems on us. In contrast, the refugee, who could have been yesterday's tourist, is the symbol of the threatening nature of globalization. He comes bringing with him all the misery and trouble of the larger world. Therefore, it's not unusual that the crucial discussion in Germany, which took most migrants, was to establish the upper limit. When we are doing something which is hard, and we are doing it unwillingly, the only solution is quantification. Tedious work must be limited, as is easier to do it when you know when it ends. In the case of the migrants, establishing the upper limit would mean that people are divided into those who have been saved, who deserve to be saved, and those who are not worthy of help, just because the quotas are full. In such circumstances, Dusan Vasiljev would, alongside Rilke, yell, a quote, heartbeat on those who are consoled. And as every form of consolation is nothing but hiding the life difficulties which burden modern Europe. After the Christian meaning of the term consolatio, which saw in the Holy Spirit the solace providing instance to the believers dedicated to prayer, the secularized version of consolation requires strength and confidence, who gives the consoled man the help he needs to persist through all existential threats. One who is consoled has trust that within this world forces arise which convince him that the turn of events in the end must be good, independent of what he alone can do through his own powers. Hopeless rhetoric would today repeat his verse, other forms would have saved us, calling for a responsive relation with the phenomena we face. They ask Europe for a creative response, which we give only when we no longer rely on what we have, but on what we do not have, which does not fall under the spectrum of known and proven reactions. Witness of the future, Dusan Vasiljev would encourage us in such an endeavor.